Refinement of Antichrist. Trilogy by Natalia Foley.
Chapter 29. Ervin stood on the top floor of the observatory beside the famous 1.8-meter Alice P. Lennon telescope, its lens pointed towards some remote destination in the heart of the universe. But tonight, he wasn't watching the stars. He was looking down at the mountain, or more precisely, at the narrow road winding up to the observatory. It was old, poorly maintained, and rarely used. Only a few visitors came during the school week, usually delivered by that same worn-out minivan with the talkative driver. Today wasn't a tourist day, but Ervin was waiting for visitors nonetheless. He'd called them that morning, his grandfather, Teddy King, and his wife, Jennifer. They should have arrived by now. He'd expected they'd take that same old minivan, but there was no van, no grandfather, no Jennifer, and Ervin knew something was wrong. He could feel it. They were so close, almost within reach of his eyes, yet they couldn't get to him. He frowned. He knew he was still too young to wield the power he carried. He knew it could hurt him, maybe even destroy him. But he had no choice. In truth, he'd always known he was living this life in preparation for this very moment, the day he would need to draw upon everything he'd learned, everything passed down through centuries, through lifetimes of inherited memory, to save the world from utter destruction. But he couldn't do it alone. He was still too young, too small, too powerless. His frown deepened. His people, his grandfather and Jennifer, were near, and they were in danger. He could sense it, like a pressure in his chest. What should he do? He began searching the bottomless well of his memory for an answer. But even as his mind raced, his body moved on instinct, guided by blood, by legacy. He placed the palm of his left hand against his forehead, closed his eyes, and reached inward for vision. At the same time, he extended his right hand forward, palm vertical, facing outward, scanning the mountain for the energy signatures of those he awaited. He wasn't sure how it worked. He was only following an ancient impulse. Then, there it was, a faint vibration, a trembling pulse against his outstretched hand. Life, faint, but unmistakable. They were there. He focused, deepened his concentration, and suddenly saw them, his grandfather and Jennifer, sitting side by side on the cold ground, nearly unconscious, slipping away from this world. He knew with chilling certainty they had only minutes left, just a few more moments of life. Ervin's heart flared with indignation. They could not die. Not only did he love them deeply, but he needed them more than ever. Who was taking them from him? He scanned the air again, and there it was, a dark cloud, thick and suffocating, wrapped around Ted and Olivia like a murderous embrace. This cloud must go. The command rang through him, not in his usual voice, but in something older, deeper. He was startled by the sound of it. It was his voice, yet not his. It carried authority he didn't recognize. The cloud must go, now. In that instant, Ervin felt himself surge with waves of energy so immense, his whole body began to vibrate violently. Every muscle in his small frame was pierced by a force so intense he was torn from the floor, levitating, glowing, channeling power of a nature he didn't fully understand. But deep inside, he knew. He was pulling Ted and Olivia back from the edge of death. He was pouring his own life force into them, willing them to wake, to rise, to walk. He couldn't name the source of this energy, but he trusted it. It came from his ancestors, from lifetimes long past. He didn't resist, he let it flow. Only when he sensed, through his inner sight, that they were safe, did he begin to release his hold. He saw them stir, saw them rise, saw them take their first steps forward, following the road straight to the observatory. He kept them under his silent watch, sending steady waves of protective energy until they reached the gateway of the observatory grounds. Only then did he relax. The transmission ceased. He dropped to the floor from his levitating height and collapsed. His entire body screamed in pain. Every cell, every fiber of muscle was exhausted. A searing ache pierced his being. He knew the energy he'd channeled was far too strong for his young frame. It had come from beings far older, far mightier, echoes of his past lives lending him strength for this one crucial act. But he was grateful, because he had just saved 2 lives, Ted's and Olivia's. Gritting his teeth, he forced himself to stand. His legs trembled, his breath came in shallow gasps, but he straightened his back. He had to be ready. His visitors were coming, the very people destined to help him save the world. Ervin stood still on the top floor of the observatory, gazing into the dark night, waiting for his visitors. He wasn't sure what he would say, or how he would explain what he needed. He was thousands of years older and myriad times wiser than either of them, Ted and Olivia, yet he was trapped in the small, fragile body of an 11-year-old boy labeled autistic. He clenched his fists. He imagined them walking into the room, asking, "What happened?" And he imagined himself replying, "I saw the evil sign in the sky. The earth is about to be destroyed. We have only days, maybe hours, to stop it, and I need your help." But the thought felt hopeless. There must be a way, he thought, there must be a way to make them believe me. He still didn't fully understand how to use his powerful mind. He was still learning to navigate his own abilities. He carried an extraordinary gift, the capacity to remember everything known to all his ancestors. From the very beginning, he'd been flooded with visions. Vivid, real, overwhelming. They weren't mirages, they felt like memories, like flashes of something that had happened to him long ago. Except it never happened to him. At first, he didn't know how to cope, but slowly he began analyzing these flashes, trying to trace their origins. Then it clicked. They were encoded in his DNA. These weren't just stories. They were the actual memories of everyone whose blood ran in his veins. He had inherited them all, their knowledge, their skills, their traumas. But he didn't know how to use them. He didn't even know the limits of his own power. Every day, like today, he discovered something new, something previously unknown to his conscious mind. He had tried to reach out to his ancestors to ask for guidance, but it was useless. They were gone. They never answered. All he had was this staggering, unsorted archive of lifetimes, confusing, chaotic, and utterly overwhelming. He'd been very young, only 3, when he first realized these memories weren't his own. Yet his brain had already developed like that of a teenager. It was terrifying. He knew his mother couldn't comprehend it, and he didn't know how to explain. He still didn't. He loved her so deeply, and he felt her pain as if it were his own. Because he had another gift too. He could read the genetic memories of others, their past, even glimpses of their future. Every time he touched his mother, strange memory pulses flooded him, scenes that belonged to her lineage, not his. It was different. How to describe it? A different mode. Though they shared ancestry, certain ancestral lines resonated more strongly in each of them. Hers was predominantly maternal. His leaned toward the paternal. So when he held her, he saw the agony coiled in her genetic past and shuddered with horror. He remembered with unbearable clarity the memory of her maternal great-grandmother, a little girl who survived the Nanjing massacre. She was just a child, repeatedly raped by dozens of Japanese soldiers. All she could pray for was to be raped again, but not killed. Ervin saw what she saw. Women stabbed through their vaginas with bayonets after being violated. Pregnant women sliced open, their unborn babies spilling out, bloodied and lifeless, never given a chance to know what life even was. The first time that memory flashed through him, he broke down, sobbing. His mother held him, heartbroken, thinking she had caused his tears. He couldn't explain that he was weeping for her great-grandmother, for a pain buried deep in her bloodline. He couldn't tell her that her grandmother had been born from one of those soldiers, conceived in violence, yet survived only because her great-grandmother, battered and broken, had crawled into the bushes and hidden in a hole for 3 days, too terrified to move, and that while hiding she witnessed unspeakable horrors that would haunt her forever. Ervin was haunted too by the dark memories of his mother's female line. He sensed her inner wounds, the silent suffering she could never voice. He knew about them, but could do nothing to heal her. All he knew was that her future would be quiet, peaceful, prosperous, and that was all he ever tried to tell her. "Mammy, you will be happy," he'd whisper, pressing close. And every time she heard it, she would start to cry. So they cried often, both of them, overflowing with love and compassion they couldn't articulate. He couldn't tell her everything he knew, because he didn't want to frighten her. She couldn't tell him what she felt, because she was sure he wouldn't understand. So they held each other, hugged tightly, whispered sweet, simple words of comfort, two halves of a single, fractured soul, aching together in silence. And if he couldn't speak his truth to her, the most loving person in his world, how could he possibly explain anything to these two strangers? Yes, they were his relatives, but he'd only seen them twice in this life. In this life.
End of chapter. To be continued. Copyright 2025. All rights reserved.